Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to take another look at my Phalaenopsis Royal Yellow. I purchased this orchid from my local Trader Joe's, and earlier this year it had already finished all its blooms. And the two flowers that you're seeing in this video right now is the two flowers that it pushed out from its original spike. Here's a clip from the previous video I did on this orchid when I first purchased it. And in that video, number one goal for that video was to introduce you, to share with you that I purchased a new orchid. But one of the things that I mentioned in the video was I was suspecting that the orchid has some genetic instability issues, and what caused me to think that was because as the flower continued to bloom, yes, it's typical that the flowers would become smaller and smaller, but the color of the flower was fading. So the smaller blooms no longer have the red background, so it was primarily just yellow and white, and then the older blooms, the bigger blooms, have a red tinge to it. So I was wondering if that's what's so-called the unstable genes. But after asking around, some of the more experienced orchid growers from Taiwan told me that it has nothing to do with that. It has more to do with the nutrients that this orchid was getting while it was blooming. It just simply did not have enough nutrients to provide to all the smaller blooms, so that's why it was not showing the red background or the red color that the older blooms were having. And here's another clip from after I had transferred it into semi-hydro setup. It was doing okay. I didn't see any root growth right after, or a couple weeks after I transferred it into semi-hydro, but because the new leaf in the middle was still growing at a pretty relatively fast speed, so I know that this orchid was doing fine. And as you can see, I used two different kinds of inorganic pebbles, manto clay and hydrocorn. The bigger size pellets are hydrocorn. And the care I give to this orchid really is very similar to in most of my orchid. When I see moisture in the cup, I don't give water. I wait until there's absolutely no signs of moisture, usually until the reservoir is completely empty, but then also there is no condensation along the side of the cup inside. Then that's when I give it water. And I typically use quarter strength of fertilizer, but as soon as I noticed that this orchid was pushing out or extending its spike, and then as soon as I saw a tiny bit of bud forming, I quickly switched to a bloom booster fertilizer, and that actually kind of made a difference. Not just kind of, it actually made a difference, because the flower that you have seen in the beginning of this video, that red background, that red blush color, it came back. Another thing I want to share with you is that, at least this is how I do it. I don't know if it's 100% correct, but at least it's not been creating any issue. And that is, I know sometimes, you see here I have inner cup and outer cup, so I do double cup method. The blue cup serve as a way to block sunlight, so that way I don't have to deal with any algae issue inside the cup. But when I give this orchid water, sometimes I would fill it up to about 80% of the entire cup. So that way most of the orchid media and the roots are soaking in either water or water with fertilizer. And then I let it soak for 10, 20, 30 minutes while I do other things, and then I come back to it, and then I would drain. I will pull out the cup, pull out the orchid, so that way the water would drain, and then the reservoir would then go to the level of where the two holes are. But sometimes I want to save water and I am lazy, so I only add water up until where those two holes are, and then I just put it back and not touch it, not give it additional water until everything else, everything is dried. And usually it would last me for about 2 weeks in my environment. So sometimes I soak it, sometimes I don't, sometimes I only fill up the reservoir, and this orchid seems to still do okay. So I think either way works, and I think it's because these pebbles, these pellets really they have the wicking effect, right? So it wicks up the moisture, and I think the roots, can still benefit from the moisture and the nutrients without being soaked. And for me, I really like that. So that way it helps me conserve some water, because as you know, I use reverse osmosis water, and it's more expensive to produce RO water versus the regular tap water that we get. And the tap water that I get, I think it's usually around 150 parts per million. So it's still borderline soft water, but since I have the equipment, might as well use RO water. But the thing about RO water is that it's there's nothing in it, right? That the ppm is 0. So if I use RO water, I should always try to give it some nutrients, so that way the orchids, these orchids can continue to grow properly. Because I know I've done some experiment where I only use pure water, and the orchid does grow slower, and the leaves do grow, did grow also very slow and are smaller in size too. And before I forget, back to the unstable genes topic, my orchid friends shared with me that instability in genes usually cause orchid to bloom with flowers that are deformed or are missing certain parts of its flower feature. It has nothing to do with color. It's usually more it has more to do with, for example, missing a sepal or missing a lip, or the sepal and petals are actually sticking together and become one big giant blob of petal or sepal. And I actually have a couple examples that I can share with you in future videos. And usually these kind of instability occurs in first flowerings of orchids first flowerings. But that's another topic of its own. Overall, I think this orchid is worth the money that I pay. It's only, I think, $8.99, and it's reblooming, so quickly, and the flower colors are just amazing, and I really like the spots, the tiny spots markings. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!